There's really no easy way to introduce what is easily the greatest fighting game ever made. Where does one start? Like this. 1991. I was just 10 years old at the time, but I was already a video game freak at this point, ask anyone. The NES was still around, although it was getting eclipsed more or less by its big brother, the SNES. There was also a change happening in the arcades, a sort of out with the old, in with the new. Larger, flashier games was the new, and along with this change, fighting games started to emerge. Mostly beat-em-up styles like Capcom's Final Fight and whatnot, but it would be Capcom and their design team who would change the arcade circuit, the fighting game, and pretty much the history of video games forever. The atom bomb of arcade games, Street Fighter II, detonated onto the scene in 1991. I remember not hearing much about it before it came out, but back then, there weren't as many sources of information as today, just a few publications. But after it came out, holy shit. I literally spent every quarter I earned playing this game, and apparently I'm not alone. It's Capcom's best-selling game of all time, ranking in over $1.3 billion in 1993. Yes, that's billions, around $3 billion in today's measurements. That's more money than fucking Avatar made. Uh-oh, getting off track. I looked out that the only bowling alley in my little town growing up had an arcade unit. You can guess where I was every Saturday afternoon. A great example of a quality-built arcade cabinet, because I used to beat the living shit out of the controls in frustration. Mostly at the game itself, but sometimes because someone else actually beat me, which didn't happen that often. Anyways, you have 8 fighters to choose from, each hailing from different countries. You select your character and proceed to fly around the world, beating one enemy at a time to a pulp. Each fighter has certain strengths and weaknesses. Some are better at long range, some are better at hand-to-hand, or hand-to-foot in some cases. There is also a wide array of superhuman or magical attacks, and strangely, it's never really stated how these are possible. I mean, I know Ken and Ryu's fireball has something to do with harnessing chi energy or some shit like that, but that's it. After you kill off all the other fighters, you face 3 mini-bosses on your way to the final showdown with M. Bison, the boss of the game. The first of the 3 mini-bosses you face is a boxer called Balrog. I still don't understand what genius at Capcom came up with that stupid name. Anyway, it's pretty easy to see this guy is just a ripoff of Mike Tyson. And much like the real Mike Tyson, this guy is no pushover either. He tends to rush at you a lot, and his reach is pretty far, so you have to be pretty good at dodging his attacks. Just try and stay low and you'll make it through. Oh my god, I remember so many times playing the bowling alley and fighting against fucking Vega, and he would just beat your ass over and over and over. There were times where I literally spent probably $5 or $10 just trying to beat Vega. Most of the time because he's jumping around like a big pussy. Not only that, but the attack where he jumps on the fence and then swan dives onto you, that's almost uncounterable. I mean, you might get lucky and counterattack, but other than that, you're pretty much screwed if he does that attack on you. Last of the 3 mini-bosses is Sagat. This guy is a Thai boxer, and this is the origin of Tiger Uppercut, or Tiger just by itself came from. I kind of like the music. It's real trippy because it sounds like an unused track from Miami Vice or something. He's not too hard though. You can usually take him out with 1 credit. Finally we get to the last boss, M. Bison. Now going back to what I was saying earlier about special or magical attacks, this guy, he does this torpedo attack against you where he's surrounded by blue flame. Like, how the hell is that possible? You'll also notice too that the game really cheats at this point because his attacks chain faster than any normal player could even do them, especially when he does like the head stomp or the double kick move. It's strange though, because back when I was a kid this seemed a lot harder than it is nowadays, but I guess that's to be expected. After you kick the shit out of him, it's the end of the game, and depending on which character you beat the game with, you're shown a short epilogue. Really simple. Doesn't Ken's girlfriend looks like she belongs on a comic strip or something? Why couldn't the developers give her the same detail that the players do? I don't know, I give up. This game was obviously the origins of many catchphrases, jingles, musical tracks, and other memorable items. Hadouken, Tiger Uppercut, Guile's stage music, the Capcom jingle, they all started here. Speaking about music in this game, am I the only one that was ever annoyed when you lost enough energy that the music in the background speeded up? I mean, especially on like Dalsum's stage with the roaring elephants in the background, that just drove me frickin' nuts.
Fucking music's driving me crazy.
Back then, I mostly played as Guile, mainly because you could trap someone in the air with the Sonic Kick, or corner them on the ground with the Sonic Boom. In the intervening years, once I learned how to do the Shoryuken reliably, I started playing as Ken all the time. I pretty much use the same tactics because you can force your opponent into a corner and just spin kick and dragon punch them to death. Now, a year after the arcade release, the first home version hit the market on the SNES. And once again, we all freaked. If my memory is correct, it took like 3 to 4 weekends in a row before my friends and I were able to rent it, because it was always rented out by somebody else. Although it was fun to be able to play for free at home, it really was one of the first times where I realized how different playing the game at home was compared to mashing buttons in the arcade. There were many subtle changes made to the SNES version because of the limited storage space. Mostly on the audio side, but some visual as well. There would be many more home releases across every major console. It was also the first time that multiple releases of the same game occurred, with Street Fighter II Championship Edition, Street Fighter II Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter II, and Super Street Fighter II Turbo being released into arcades, and each one having alterations or additions to the original format. Championship Edition was fun because you could now play as the bosses. Super Street Fighter II Turbo was okay, but it turned me off, since the large selection of characters we hadn't grown up with was rather difficult to get used to. After this barrage of Street Fighter II releases, everything mostly calmed down. Later on in the 90s, there was the Alpha series, then the EX series in the early 2000s. It wasn't until the release of Street Fighter IV in 2011 that Capcom saw such a large surge in game fans previously only known as Street Fighter II. Overall, Street Fighter II is a classic above other classics, and it has impacted more than just the gaming scene. I have many great memories of it, and I'm sure a lot of you do out there as well. Thanks for watching. Go check it out if you haven't already.